večer všetkým, vítajte. Teším sa, že vás je toľko. Ďakujeme, že ste prišli. Máme také, by som povedala, výnimočné výročie. Reflexie architektúry sa práve teraz dožívajú svojho 10. ročníku. Takže sme tu od roku 2016. To nie je vôbec málo. A za to teda ďakujem v prvom rade fakulte, že to toleruje. A tento rok sme sa rozhodli, potom ako sme zmapovali susedné krajiny a raz vykročili trošku ďalej smerom do Norska, tento rok sme sa dostali asi najďalej, ako sa to hovorí, cez kanál na Britské ostrovy. Tento ročník je teda venovaný architektúre Spojeného kráľovstva. V prvom rade by som sa veľmi chcela poďakovať britskému veľvyslanectvu v Bratislave, ktoré bolo týmto projektom od začiatku nadšené. Menovite by som chcela spomenúť ambasádora Nigela Bakera, ktorý prejavil veľké nadšenie pre architektúru, takže aj keď už nie je v Bratislave, mu za toto ďakujem. Vítam tu aj našich kolegov, architektov a ďakujem aj Slovenskej komore architektov, že nás podporuje v tomto podujatí v podstate už niekoľko rokov. Ďakujeme. So now I will switch to English. I'm very happy that we celebrate the 10th years of our series on reflections on architecture, and I'm very happy that this, let's say, 10th year is actually about the architecture scene, which is really close to me and which I admire very much, and this is the British scene. And I'm even more happy that I can say that we can start with an architect who is quite, let's say, at home in Bratislava. David West, welcome, and I'm very, very happy that you are here with us. David is one of the main architects, Egret West architects based in London. But he has also a few works here in Bratislava. He will probably talk about those projects, and I guess it will be quite interesting and exciting to hear it from the author. So I will not talk more about you, David. Welcome, and the floor is yours. And the micro, the red one.
Thank you. I love the red one. Thank you. Thank you. So apparently I have 60 minutes maximum, so I'm going to try for 45 minutes, okay, because I do tend to speak quite a lot, and it's a slightly rainy night tonight, so it's probably quite good not to talk for too long. Okay, so 45, maybe 50, maybe 60 if we're enjoying it. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm aware that I'm the first speaker representing England, which I learned just yesterday comes all the way from the Anglo-Saxons who created England. I had no idea of that until yesterday, my daughter's homework. I don't know if you know, but this stack of books here are books from each different country that's participated over the last 10 years, giving a reflection on architecture. So I'm quite privileged to be the first person talking about England, and I hope to share some hopefully interesting stories with you. So my studio is 21 years old in November. And I'm going to immediately say our studio rather than my studio, because my studio I founded with Studio Egret 21 years ago, and 4 years ago we became something called an employee-owned trust. So I no longer own my studio, it's our studio. We're about 70 people strong, and every single person in the studio owns the studio too. We just work together in a collective. And it's quite empowering to think that allows every single person in the group, in the collective, to think about the future of the practice. We like to think that we do more than create a building, a piece of architecture, or a landscape, a piece of public realm or a city plan. We feel that our role and our responsibility is to help shape places and to constantly kind of strive to shape surprise, delight, and additionality in every single project we work in. So to go way beyond the kind of the red line boundary has been something we've done the entire time. We paint, we draw, we sketch, all the old school stuff in equal proportion to our use of modeling, digital modeling, physical modeling, and increasingly AI as our friend. We are constantly striving to be thought leaders and think about things that we are uncomfortable about, trying out things that we just don't know. We are on the ground floor of a showroom that opens out to the street, and constantly we're creating ideas and putting them on the windows to say, this is what we're thinking about at the moment. What do you think? And we end up with amazing conversations with all sorts of people that pass us by. We pride ourselves on not having the answer to absolutely everything and going on journeys to discover the answer with other people. We are completely and utterly against the concept of the master plan, this two-dimensional thing which is driven by the master, which is kind of, for me, a sexist term. It makes me think of a guy saying, I am the master and this is how it's going to be. We create frameworks that evolve over time and are shaped with many, many hands. We are extremely good collaborators, pushing people, working with other people, being friends with lots of people. There's some friends in the audience here tonight. And we are a landscape-led practice, ecosystem-led practice. So whilst I'm here talking about reflection on architecture, I'd like to reflect upon landscape urbanism as well as architecture, because to me it's all blended, and as soon as you stop thinking just within the building, then you're kind of almost sunk. You have to rub those lines out and look about how everything's going to sit and how things are going to connect. This is just an image from one of our main projects in London at the moment. We also love to party, and I think the importance of testing ideas and trialing prototypes of spaces and programming is really, really important. You can make the most beautiful building, but if it's not popular and if it's not full of energy and open and porous and invitational, well, it's still just a nice looking building. It's not really a place. So we design buildings like places, and that's the kind of a very strong mantra for us. And we spend just as much time thinking about how it might come alive as the design itself. So this is a building that was due for demolition when we started the competition. The brief was, everything goes. It's not here anymore. We've already signed the demolition order. It's not for this planet for maybe more than 2 years. We were the only people in the competition that said, how about no? We can use that building and give it a new life. It's now one of the most popular venues in the whole of England. It's a 10,000 person extraordinary venue for amazing events at the heart of the place. And we tend to look for things that can be authentic. So it's not the easiest path. As a designer, as an architect, frankly, in this day and age, it's easier to be like an expensive handbag. Prada. Who likes a Prada? I like a Prada. I'll buy a Prada. Comme des Garçons. Who likes a Comme des Garçons? I'll buy this one. I'm afraid our studio doesn't work like that, which is probably, I'm not very famous, you probably don't know who I am, and I really don't care. I don't ever want to be a star architect that someone says, I'm going to buy one of those. I think it's crass, and it really isn't how architecture should work. I genuinely believe we should spend our time caring about place and about community, about things that happen before us, and that things will happen after us, and we're just part of a process rather than the big I am. And if there's one message I can give you tonight, that's it. You don't have to agree with it. Maybe you are a star architect in the making. I fundamentally disagree with it as an attitude. So our studio is completely and utterly multidisciplinary and fluid. We are a transdisciplinary studio. We have architects, model makers, filmmakers, interior designers, branding, wayfinding, graphic design. Everything's just one blurry mess. And we love it like that because it allows people to shine in terms of, here's an idea, here's a thought, what about this, what about that? This year has actually been our toughest year on the planet so far. My personal toughest professional year. The UK scene isn't doing so well. So our studio has actually downsized. I'm not here to feel sorry for myself. It was sad to see some of my teammates go, and it's okay, they've got new jobs. But interestingly, this month, we're going to open our studio for 12 lucky people like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory to come in and hang out in our space. The one rule is they can't be architects. And I'm so looking forward to what a poet, an illustrator, a cartoonist, a computer game maker, someone who cares about drainage, someone who cares about bins is going to bring to our studio. People who are kind of transforming places in a different way. We once had one of our old employees, a girl called Safia Qureshi, who said, I don't want to be an architect anymore. And I said, cool, come and sit in our studio. And she made a company called Cup Club, which was this super strong, environmental, ambitious company that said, why do we keep buying coffee cups every single time and throwing them away? That's wrong. I'm going to create Cup Club. And she created an amazing multi-million-pound business with her architecture head on. So you'll never forget the training of being an architect. I still think the architecture training is the best thing to be the most lateral, most strategic thinker that's capable of zooming from one scale all the way to the scale of a door handle. But if architecture continues to change, as I think it will, don't be sad. Just embrace change and continue to think about what you can do with your incredible training and your mindset in terms of curing society's ills and thinking about new and inventive ways of working. Trust me, transdisciplinary thinking makes a huge difference. Our studio's processes, I happen to like alliteration, is all about S's. So we have a studio, we have a showroom, we tell stories, we zoom in, we zoom out, strategy with specificity. One super important word is symbiosis. That's all about how everything blends together and grows and learns from each other in symbiotic relationships. I've never seen a project fail as soon as you start thinking in a kind of holistic way about an ecosystem approach. But the last word is probably my favorite word of our process, which is serendipity. We don't define everything. We create frame. The framework for the city, the framework for the building, the framework for the public space, and then we allow things to grow, to change, to evolve. Because it's going to happen anyway. You know, how many buildings are you now coming back and looking at again as architects? How many buildings will you be restoring, refurbishing, adding new layers to? On the top, out the back, on the side, underneath, oval, parasitical kind of structures, and. Things keep on changing, and they always will. So why we always think to try and fix it, isn't it perfect? It's stupid. It's not going to be perfect. Someone might graffiti it in 2 days, and maybe that might add another level. The second thing we kind of have is principles, or the P's. I have no idea how this translates in Slovak. People and plants in equal measure. This is incredibly important to us. There's an amazing campaign being led by Heatherwick Studio at the moment called Humanize. I love that campaign, but I would add plants and nature even more powerfully within that agenda. And so I'd call it Harmonize. It's even more powerful, in my opinion, than humanizing things. In that if we forget nature and we forget the biological systems and the natural systems around us, you kind of fail. Poetry, storytelling, amazing stories, and pragmatism in equal measure. If you're not pragmatic, nothing happens. If you're not poetic, you get a bland outcome. And those words are incredibly important to us. Propagation, I already said, this idea of starting things off and trialing things and testing things, programming, promenading, the incredible ability to walk and move and energize and feel alive in a space. Don't shut it down. Think about the sequence, think about the loop, think about the paths. Porosity of buildings. So many buildings have the opportunity to lift themselves up and invite people through in terms of the way that they can kind of progress. And then remember that ground floor layer, the kind of the play, the performance, the production. These things are kind of daily life. They're the things that make the difference between the place that you love and the place you just walk past and ignore and don't really care about. But it was quite photogenic. I took an Instagram shot. But the places that everybody really feels are the places they have incredibly strong connections with. And then lastly, we find the most important role of an architect is to be the mediator, to be the conductor, to be the curator, as well as the creator, and to actually work in partnership with so many people to allow things to happen. That's when you add value. And trust me, if you're at this point in your lives, I think you're all final year students, probably all with jobs or starting out on your second job and continuing to evolve, or maybe in your third or fourth job, architecture is changing and you're going to have to change with it and continue kind of evolve. So thinking about what you bring in terms of added value is key. So we are 21 years old in November, and one thing we're really good at is shaping everyday wonder. That is the mantra of our studio after 21 years. It happens to be SEW, Studio Egret West, but it's also shaping everyday wonder. The ability to shape rather than just make, the ability to care about the everyday for everyone, inclusive and accessible, but to never ever forget the most important thing probably, which is the ability to inspire, to surprise, to delight and create awe. Everybody has a different interpretation about awe, but that moment, even today, you walk into your space here, this incredible awe-inspiring kind of arrival point that has the ability to host so much change and so much interest. That's the awe within this building. And if you forget the awe, then everything becomes bland. So I'm going to hopefully bring to life a few stories that explain the spirit of what our studio has done over the last 20 years. Not everything. I've left out a lot, you'll be happy to hear. But some of the key stages we've experienced to reflect upon practice in the UK, because that's what I'm here to do. So this project is our first project. It was about 21 years ago that we started this project. It was a huge building, the longest listed building in Europe. 1.2 kilometres long, an absolute monster. And most people in Sheffield, in the north of England, hated this building and said it should be demolished because it was so ugly and so terrifying in terms of its structure. And yet the people who built it in the 60s thought they were doing a good thing. They were kind of collecting up people who were living in really tightly packed streets and offering them something new, streets in the sky. Our role was to try and convince the city, the populace, the people, that it might be a good idea to not knock this building down and actually to give it a second chance of life. And so we started with program, with color, all those P's that I told you about, to think about how it might be transformed. And very, very quickly, we managed to kind of allow people to see it differently, to change the perceptions of the place, and to actually see, this is way before we were worried about carbon. This is a long time ago, way before trying to keep the building that's there first. This was quite pioneering in its time. And what we did was we kind of changed the way that people perceived the building, how it landed, how it opened itself up, how the core would invite you in a much more attractive way, how we changed the feel of the building, which was so heavy, and opened it up with light and color. And it's really interesting to go back now, because we're a bit old and grey, and actually ask the residents who moved in how they're doing. And it's so important, I think, for architects to go back and check in. How are you feeling now about this place? And what business have you got being here? And what's really beautiful is that a lot of people genuinely love living here. This place that was going to be demolished is now loved. People have made their lives there, their families there, their businesses there in this space. We transformed every inch of this place, keeping it raw, keeping it real, keeping it honest, just raw concrete in some places, and then bringing it to life in terms of the different types of homes. We've gone on, and we've been fortunate to go on and look at numerous other buildings that people say, wow, that's so brutal, that's so sort of intimidating. The Balfron Tower. And what's in the UK, this has started to be called constructive conservation, where you're really trying to learn about a quality of a building, learn what's wrong with it, but also learn what's right with it, and then slowly kind of add layers of life and joy and quality to allow it to come back to life as amazing places to live or work. This particular building has this really unusual super wide core, and it has really lots of space that was left over. The original architect, Goldfinger, wanted this to be hobby rooms. You never build this now in a really super efficient apartment building now. But this guy decided that he wanted to have rooms for hobbies. They didn't have the budget to do it in the 60s and the 70s when it was built, but fortunately we did. So we went back and we actually refurbished all the hobby rooms to actually have the dining room that you'd not be able to have in a small apartment, the drum kit and the music room acoustically sealed so you could really go for it, the hobby room, the maker's room, the library room, etc. But of course, the worst thing about the 60s and 70s was the paucity of landscape, the kind of the quality of the way the buildings were landing was so often really poor. And what we were able to do is bring it to life again in terms of play and in terms of planting. That idea of keeping things is something that's very powerful in our practice and increasingly in the practice of architects in England. It's a really strong thing. You know, the most sustainable building is the building that already exists. So why not try and use it and give it life? I'll go further than that, though. The idea of carte blanche, to me, is quite a negative thing. You know, I will wipe this surface clean. Perfect. There's absolutely nothing here. But now I just put my big idea onto it. Ta-da! And then maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Whereas if you come along to an unusual structure of books that happen to have some history and some story and some relevance, maybe you can give that another life. And for me, that's actually easier. And instead of tabula rasa or carte blanche, it's a tabula plena, the full table. The full and interesting, multi-layered, messy table that you can actually work with. The old vinyl factory is a lovely example of this. When we won this competition some 13 years ago in 2012, it was completely and utterly surrounded by car parking, completely and utterly derelict buildings. And there was this absolutely terrible planning application that had been granted to remove most of the buildings, to keep most of the surface car parking, and just drop in a few kind of really average buildings. And it was called London Gate. Why? Because it was Zone 6, the arrival point to London, so it's London Gate. When we did the competition, we just couldn't believe that anybody could be so crass as to call this place London Gate, because this place was actually his master's voice. This place was actually the old gramophone factory that had created so many extraordinary records. Incredible prose, incredible guitar playing, incredible music. Even Jimi Hendrix recorded here. And yet somebody said, let's just call it London Gate. Thankfully, our client agreed with us and allowed us to tell a story that's over 100 years in the making and bring that back to life into the architecture of this place, into the landscape and the story. This incredible history that was almost so close to being completely lost. So what did we do? We talked to everybody about it. The first thing we did was get a brilliant artist called Morag Myerscough to make this beautiful pavilion, the vinyl pavilion. We invited people to play music and actually create recordings again. We got people to come and actually play historic gramophone music as well and share it, because it should be open to everybody of all ages. And slowly but surely, we doubled no, tripled the density of what was expected on this site in this London Gate position. Gone were the surface car parks, instead a much more dense, intertwined, mixed-use proposition. And I'm happy to say on the way here this morning, flying out from Heathrow, I can tell you that 95% of those buildings are now built. So 12, 13 years later, that whole place has been constructed, and not all by me, which is great, as it should be, by about 7 or 8 different architects over time and different people working together to make a place. And it's just continued to happen, and now I can go back and take some footage and share it with the studio and learn from it. But what we did do was build a big dog, because the dog was the gramophone, the motif of the gramophone company. So let's give this place a giant dog again. And our wonderful client, Richard Upton and Martin Evans, allowed that to happen. And then we built a car park just to get all the car parking out of the way from the ground to release the other things. And then we bought the rights to an amazing bit of Beatlemania, these girls and guys screaming at the Beatles, and we put that onto the side of the car park. It was a cheap structure, a little bit of yellow to enliven it. And then we started to work with local craftspeople to make the gramophones. And yes, they do play music, and we've put that into the public realm. And slowly but surely, this place, every single building has a name. The name, historically, that sits underneath the original factory buildings comes back to life, and that starts to shape the quality of the environment. And slowly but surely, this place changes. The old powerhouse that was completely redundant becomes a new innovative workspace. The boiler house, between 3 metal buildings that form together in this quite kind of joyful and colourful way. And what I find exciting about that is that the narrative of the place, that was way before anybody in our studio gets to come alive again and let the stories be heard again. And for me, the power of storytelling in architecture is so, so important. Imagine the stories your parents used to tell you before you go to bed. And then imagine not telling stories anymore for the rest of your career. How crazy would that be? How crazy would that be when all we actually live for is these amazing stories and, oh, tell me that one again, tell me that one again, it's amazing. So why we stop telling stories and just say, it's a building, it's 10 stories higher and I've decided to make it pink? Come on. Give us a little bit more. And what we found is that by telling stories, we empower decision makers to sort of believe. People who are scared of change, local communities, to believe and actually sort of go on a journey with us. Eastwick and Sweetwater, again, a huge amount of work, a huge amount of input. This was the transformation of the east of London, the Olympic Games. The kind of came to London in 2012, transformed it in terms of stadia and a river and BBC recording centres and incredible velodromes, but no one was living here. The job has been to try and transform that into a place to live, but not at the cost of the artists that live next door in the warehouses. Would you believe in these warehouses that are so covered in graffiti and mess, there are 12, 13, 14, 15 people living in a warehouse making cool shit. And then next door to them, some other people making some even more cool shit. And it just keeps going. Do you want those people to leave? Do you want those people to be priced out because the kind of the des res comes to buy the apartments? No, of course not. So you have to work closely with the artists, with the makers, to actually create something that's authentic and can fit, that isn't too posh, isn't too perfect, but that can grow over time. So again, the architecture, the first building we made, is not posh, is not expensive, it's not perfect, it's made of timber, and it sort of lifted itself up and extended the artist's studio from the next door neighbour. Come in for free. Come in for free. We negotiated with our client, we get all the homes you want, but we want to give that space downstairs to them for free, because then they can continue to infect this place with enthusiasm, with art, with making, with creativity. And then we can have an amazing rooftop that just starts to hint at other futures. And it has to look imperfect. Wabi-sabi. It has to not be perfect, otherwise we've lost it if we just dump something on this site. And then slowly this starts to grow into a much bigger framework, 1,500 homes, 6 different architects working together, loads of different character, loads of different craft. On this occasion, lots of quite strong industrial forms, simple frames, strong brick buildings, warehouses, modern warehouses for living is the theme, is the idea. So it feels of this place. And slowly over time, it evolves. I find this really interesting in terms of long-term thinking. Quite early on in the process, we said to our client, this is 1,500 homes. It's going to take at least 10 years to build. So don't stress about it. Just lean in. 300, 200 more, 150 more, maybe 150 more. In the meantime, give away a plot to makers, to entrepreneurial space. And thankfully they agreed. So a brilliant architect called Turner Works, Carl Turner, created this wonderful meanwhile building that will be there for 10 years, maybe 15. Who cares? But it's really cheap. It's made of corrugated iron, and it has loads and loads of creative spaces and makers and people eating and drinking alongside each other, so much more affordable than if it was done properly. But actually, it might live forever. This is the more permanent scheme that might someday happen in its place. But adapting and embracing the lack of permanence, I think, is really, really important. Not to be too precious about, I finished, ta-da, just keep growing. And I think that's a really key thing from the English practice, I would say, that kind of ability to constantly grow. This is our latest major project in London. It's such a big thing. You can see it's an absolutely huge, huge void in West London. 15 years ago, it was covered with buildings, an absolutely huge exhibition centre that meant so much to so many people. Some people saw David Bowie there. Some people saw the Ideal Home Show there. Some people bought a boat there. You know, this was the biggest exhibition centre in London. It was all demolished, and a consented scheme for very, very simple housing across the whole lot was given. Our job, and again, this project we do in 50-50 with a company called Hawkins Brown. Just like we're 50-50 with Sneheta here in the South Bank, we collaborate on this project. This place's history. Again, way beyond me, way beyond our studio. So our challenge was to give back to this place a vision that was pioneering, that was unusual, that was full of performance, of awe, of surprise and delight, of wonder. And how do you go about doing that? Well, to give back space. To give back space, to make space. So this project will be 7.5 million square feet of accommodation. It's a huge, huge ambition. Buildings that step from 4 stories to 45 stories. Of course, I believe in the overarching vision. It will take 15 to 20 years. The incredible Earls Court Development Company will actually build it all out. But the most important thing in this project is the generosity of the landscape. And here our studio is leading the landscape and sharing the landscape with a Danish practice called SLA. Again, collaboration, absolutely key. And what we create here is not just one space, but a sequence of spaces that connect. The flower amphitheatre that connects through to the table park that reuses a structure that we found. Lily Siding Square that's just a bit messed up because it still has railway sidings underneath it, but that can add quality to the place. 3 stations will be connected, and sequentially, piece by piece, we'll unlock those places. But within that public space, we'll be creating the cultural ecosystem. So not just the biodiverse ecosystem, not just the plants and the kind of the gardens and the kind of the sustainable urban drainage all being connected and working in one way, but balancing that and connecting it into multiplicity of venues, of small scale, medium scale and large scale places to meet, to perform, to convene, etc. So you get this much richer environment in terms of the way it grows. But how do you know that that might work? You don't. So you have to, again, grow it. So again, working very carefully with our client, you start it out. You know, the steel pans, the steel drums, to get the community to start to come together to talk. A shop called Conversation Corner to say, hey you, come on in here. We're talking about some quite cool stuff here. Get involved. Some participation. We tried out a thing called BBC Earth, where it was like a digital virtual experience, walking through all this amazing parakeets and giraffes. And you know what? It didn't work out that well. It was a bit too big. It was a bit too empty. There wasn't anything fun for the kids to do, so it closed. After about a year and a half, 2 years, it was like, whoops, sorry, didn't work out so well. Meanwhile, the Underbelly Festival, that went really well. But most importantly, there's now this thing called The Greatest Showman Come Alive, which is like a modern day circus acts. People doing stuff I cannot imagine doing ever times 100 years myself. But wow, it's an incredible wonder to see. The idea of trialing things and maybe not getting them right, it's okay. And I think architecture is really important in terms of making that frame and that opportunity, because then you can believe in some of the other more polished versions that will come forward over time. And yes, the landscape that holds it together is so important and so enriching, and has to be just as diverse as the architecture, and should be specific in each and every way as we move around it. We've taken that kind of thinking into another part of London, Lewisham. And here we create, again, a multiple layered transformation of a massive shopping centre. So it's really not glamorous at all. It's a 1960s shopping centre that has a few really important shops in it for local people. It meets their needs. It's really important that those shops still stay. No judgment, you need those shops, the day-to-day market, the day-to-day high street. But our client and the municipality want more homes. They want this to be a kind of a new urban metropole, a new centrality. So our brief is to put 2,000 plus homes on top of this shopping centre. That's no small brief. That's a big, ambitious brief. So what we did with all of the community groups was really start to unpick the place, understand the corners, understand how it felt in certain areas, understand how we could change every single kind of moment and aspect of this place carefully, step by step, stitch by stitch, allowing the majority of the retailers to stay. But how can we actually add landscape, public realm into this place was the challenge. And what we found was that actually, because this shopping centre had all of its servicing from the top, we actually needed to kind of go even further and go on top one more still. A little bit like your bus station here, you've got this ambitious roof. I think it's quite impressive actually. But the journey to get to that roof maybe doesn't need to be in the shopping centre. And what we tried to do was, like a blanket, actually kind of allow the park space to undulate all the way down and connect into all of the other spaces. So we bring the park to the heart of the site and give it back. And what was quite powerful for us was the historic name of Lewisham, back in the old days, was Levisham. And Levisham means the house in the meadows. I didn't make it up. It's kind of beautiful. So we made a meadow. And right in the middle of the meadow, a community hall, the house in the meadows, a free gift. Anybody can use it, anybody can enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to that opening in a few years' time. But this ability to then blend multi-layered, multi-leveled landscape and architecture together, we find really empowering and a crucial part of the work that we now do on these really complex regeneration projects. The color, the life, the landscape, the programming, everything I said in terms of the principles is now what we're seeing flowing through all of our projects all the time. Up in Manchester, we're transforming an amazing place called Mayfield. It used to look like this, just literally 6 years ago. Completely derelict, completely contaminated, completely empty, and really very unpleasant activities going on. Really unsafe and really unsavory. And yet, just there is the main central station of Manchester. We are literally 2-minute walk from the central station of Manchester. And our entire challenge was to help people turn left at the station and want to walk into what would otherwise be a dangerous place. The history of this site taught us that there was these amazing buildings and amazing making factories, but also this incredible building here that I was told was due for demolition. I could not believe that this building was going to be demolished. It was done deal. It's over. I told you the story earlier. I couldn't believe it. How can that building be standing there like that and be demolished? So we sought inspiration in music, because architects don't know all the answers. And the Smiths wrote this incredible soundtrack to Manchester. Manchester is all about sound and music. That's the soul of the city. And the Smiths wrote this beautiful piece: amid concrete and clay and general decay, nature must still find a way. And empowered by that mantra, we literally made that building come alive. And literally opened it up, blew the doors off, invited people in. Incredible partner, Simeon Aldred of Vibration Group. Wow, what a hero, in doing incredible things to bring this to life. Not just the massive acid bash raves, but also incredible ballet, light shows, incredible weddings, incredible venues, and it just keeps growing. And then we made the first park in 100 years. So we led out, our client allowed us to lead the project with a park. Hopefully like we're going to do over at South Bank, Jakob, with play, inviting people in. The first city centre park to be created in 100 years. And it's not too perfect. You hear what I'm saying? England's not that particularly perfect. And so you just lean in to that imperfection. So we found funny old bridges that we could reuse. We found derelict kind of elements that we could give a new purpose to. And we led out with play for everybody to be involved. And now suddenly this park, which everybody loves, is going to play host to a whole myriad of homes, and every single phase will extend the park further and deeper into the architecture, all the buildings coming forward. And that kind of mantra of park first kind of delivers what will be a huge scheme over the next 15, 20 years. Absolutely huge scheme. And what we find is that kind of mantra that we have continues throughout all of our work. We always think about how to add the additional value, how to add the differentiating quality. On this particular project, it was all about work. All about saying, hey, you, come on in here, make a company, have a brilliant idea. And how you could get a creative community like we see in Brighton to actually have a home to prototype, to print, to 3D print, to trial, and not worry if they get it wrong. So right in the middle of this complex scheme that we crafted, we made this this home for makers and for people experimenting with color, with light, with a terrace at the top. This is the density which we're used to now in the UK. These are English reflections, and this is the sort of the density. We used to have suburban density that would just be street upon street upon street upon street, and now we have much denser conditions. Look at the looseness of this. And if you go to this sort of density, you're prototyping into different ways of living, working, and playing together. The landscape becomes so much more important. The aspect becomes so much more important. The lighting and the microclimate becomes so much more important. But if you lean into it, it can be wonderful. So what does this mean? All the way back home here to Bratislava. Well, we're very lucky. We have two projects here. We have an amazing collaborator over there, Juraj Pavlovic and Grow, and the guys at the back there. Amazing collaborators who happen to have a cool studio on the other side of the street here, looking out at all you amazingly talented people. And we're collaborating twice, actually, this and South Bank together. So this is the Bratislava Science Park as it stands, and it's really surprisingly beautiful. And it has a few really rather iconic buildings in it. But most of the time, it doesn't feel like a really buzzing place. And our project, which is slowly but surely gathering momentum over the coming year, is to really say, let's open up. Let's invite people in. Let's make and shape that everyday wonder. We want the science to be on show. We want the scientists to sort of actually share their work. We want wider community members to come in. So gradually we've been crafting this way of working with all of the landscape to actually make a much stronger, much more inviting park. Euro and the Grow team, we've been working out how to actually get the balance of the different types of accommodation in clusters to sort of create much more of a collegiate environment there. And I'm about to transform, just on site, He's going to tell you some other time the existing arrival building to become a proper conference center with an amazing new cafe and kind of breakout exhibition spaces, etc. And we're hoping to lead out the project with a really experimental square that will actually sort of sit and become the arrival point and give you a kind of a prelude to the longer term vision for the place. And that arrival square, we hope, will be a showcase of climate resilience, experimental, trialing. It might not work, but it doesn't matter, because that's the point, because not every science experiment works, right? Didn't we all learn that at school? It should be a trial, it should be a test, it should be an experiment. I should walk into the science campus of SAV and go, what? That's so interesting. Biodiverse pollinator meadows, clean air cloud forest, water management wetland, drought-tolerant terraces. Wow! I must be walking into a super cool scientific campus rather than just a car park. I hope we get to do that. And I hope it gets done in the next couple of years. And I hope it's going to be amazing to arrive here and just go, wow. And then last but not least, the finale, good old Bratislava South Bank. This is not the lecture to go on about it too much. This is a mashup of all the things we're doing. We were totally and utterly inspired by the banks of the River Danube when we did this competition. We were totally inspired by this huge abundance of trees and nature that was hundreds of years ahead of us when we arrived there. So I'm afraid we really didn't want to follow the parameters completely to the letter that were set in the kind of the guidance of the planning and the policy. We wanted to bring the building line back and let the trees preside. We wanted to say, hey, historic Bratislava, come on over. Do you remember all those P's? The promenade and the porosity and the programming and the invitation. We wanted to do that. We wanted to say, hey, people who live in the historic side, come over to the kind of the South Bank side and you're welcome. Come and walk on our boardwalk. And please let yourself be growing with us this neighborhood that grows with it. A variety of different bowls were shaped by the trees. A culture bowl, a sports bowl, a dramatic kind of skate bowl, a kind of a therapeutic, calmer, quieter bowl. And actually suddenly all of the homes just sit back a little bit and actually look out over this incredible landscape. The first major phase being the play bowl and the boardwalk that kind of allows you to sort of be invited in. All the buildings stepping back and contouring as if they were shaped by nature, shaped with nature, like pieces of contoured mass. And then even the taller buildings as they come up, contoured and stepped and creviced and cracked as they go into the sky. Working in a brilliant partnership with our friends from an Innsbruck studio of Snehetta and our lovely local partners here with Grow and Pantograph as our really incredibly important local teammates, crafting and crafting. And I'm very happy to have, just before this talk tonight, gone to actually see the Phase Zero. It was our little joke during the competition phase that it would be really cool to start this project with a red hot chili pepper under the bridge. You've got to be quite old to understand why that's funny, but thank you. By the time it's gone through the kind of the process of affordability, value engineering, and what you're allowed to build as meanwhile in this country, we managed to build this. Or Grow at least managed to detail and design that with our lovely client Jakob from Penta, allowed us to at least create this little resting place, this little stop on the cycle for a cocktail, for a beer, for a sandwich. But it's just the start. The red hot chili pepper under the bridge. Thank you very much. Come on, 45 minutes. I promised you 45 minutes. Whew, okay.
David, thank you. Thank you so much. It's really amazing. Look at the students there all laughing. I hope not about. That's great.
I hope now we have space for questions, and I hope there will be many questions from your side. I completely forgot to say at the beginning that there is the possibility to write your questions in Slido, which you have in your digital classroom. But for those who are not so shy, they can ask. You can ask directly. So please, hands up, and here were the questions for David. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. First, it was a great conference. I loved it. And you talked on the beginning from the serendipity word. So the fact that you can't know everything, you can create everything that's going to happen. But how do you work with that in the process of the project by thinking of it, and how do you let the place to this unknown factor?
I think in UK practice, we're often working with parameters, and there's things we can control and often need to control in terms of the height, the massing, the way a building lands or a public space is shaped. I think what we try to do is create the most generous version of the project, to allow something to be gifted, to allow something to have a level of freedom. Not all clients agree with us, and we've lost some clients because of our tenacity and belief in that, but we've also gained some clients who I really love working with because they want the best outcome for communities, for stakeholders. My incredible co-founding business partner, Studio Egret, who's the Egret in the Studio Egret West, who's now stepped down last year. He always speaks about le truc en bleu. He's French, and that's me trying to say in French, the extra little thing, the extra surprise, and making sure that there's a good idea, there's a good reason for doing every single project. And so serendipity for us is this kind of rule of embracing happenstance that creates the room for something else to happen. The other thing about serendipity is it's like a mindset. So I don't think we will cure cancer just by somebody sitting in a room on their own analysing figures and numbers. I really don't believe that's going to happen. I do believe that moment when I walk down the stairs and, wait a second, you made me think of that, and then, no way, that's it. That's when we will find additional cures and additional qualities. And so if I was American, I'd probably say bounce. Because I'm British, I might say bump. But the ability to have bounce space, bump space, grind space, not quite sure what it is space, is super important. So that co-working innovation hub we made in Brighton, it's all about the circulation. It's all about the looseness of the stairs and a few funky spots where people might bump into each other and have a cool idea. And that's just making serendipity in a building.
Thank you.
That's okay. As far as I know, you used to work with Will also.
I did, is correct? Yeah.
He used to be my teacher. And do you think you can speak a little bit about your cooperation?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when I was... So I have to tell you a secret first. I hope I don't disappoint anybody. I'm not an architect. I always get introduced as an architect. I'm not an architect, I'm an urban designer. And I studied planning before that. I just happen to have worked in architecture for a long time. I'm 51. I've done the same thing for 31 years. I was a pretty enthusiastic designer. and pretty enthusiastic communicator, and I managed to work my way around the world doing that for the first 4 years of my career for a company called W.S. Atkins, a big engineering firm. I worked in China, I worked in Portugal, I worked in Brazil. I was super lucky. I just had a super nice time. And then I thought, I don't know enough. I need to work with someone who is much stronger designer than me, with a much greater vision, a stronger paintbrush. I need to feel uncomfortable. I feel too comfortable. These guys keep telling me I'm really cool, and I'm going to go and see the main board, and I can have some shares, and my future's this. Whoa, that's not cool. That's not me. I want to hang out with someone who makes me feel uncomfortable. So I reached out to the most radical pioneering architect of the time in 1999, and that was Will Alsop. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm this super cool, super fast talking guy that can tell stories to anybody and share incredible visions. How about I make an urban design firm in your firm? Because you're amazing, and you're probably going to see that in me. And he said, always smoking, as you know. And then a bit of a glass of wine. And he looked at me and said, but you're just I can't swear because you're recording, something planner. What am I going to do with you? And I said, well, give me a go. And he did. And I worked with Will for 4 years. And funnily enough, we created a company in Will Alsop's practice that wasn't called urban design, because Will didn't ever see it as urban design. He saw it as big architecture. And he actually created a company at Will Alsop's practice, which was called Alsop, in 1999, called Big. And hilariously enough, when Bianca was still at Plot, I gave him my business card, and he thought it was pretty cool. And it was called Big. And Will was, it's a true story, Will, and a funny one, but Will was the most generous storyteller I've ever met a whole life. And he would just bring people together, draw out their stories, and whilst drawing out their stories over that wine with that cigarette, he would draw, sketch, paint, and dream. Most dreamiest utopian architect I was ever lucky enough to work with. And then I also met Christophe Egret. And Christophe Egret was a director at Will Alsop's practice. And the 4 years that I was there, he was kind of my go-to, my hero. He's 15 years older than me, and we got on really well, which is why we then made a practice together. He's a beautiful man, and rest in peace, Will Alsop. Incredible man.
Thank you. This is another but we have a few questions also from...
Okay, yeah, from Slido, there are a few questions that I'm going to read. How do you convince investors to refurbish existing buildings when it's usually more expensive than demolishing and building new ones?
Okay, well that would be a reflection on architecture thing, in that at this current time, and definitely for the last decade, I think building up, the sustainability credentials and the carbon footprint of buildings in the UK actually almost forces one to take a very serious, very significant look at the existing building and its potential to be refurbished before it is demolished. You have to have a really, really good reason and a really good proof as to why it has no longer the potential for a sustainable second life. It doesn't mean it's always possible, because sometimes it's simply not viable in terms of the ability to reuse the building. But often we're finding things are kind of blended together. So it's not really us convincing, it's more our system and our processes asking those questions first. I personally love to reuse buildings, and our studio does a lot of that, but we have failed a couple of times too. I think if the building has the potential to add value, then it's the architect's role to prove that it has the potential to add value to the quality of the place. And it should not definitely be knocked down because somebody said it was ugly, or because they couldn't see its potential use. So the architect's role is to show its full potential.
It's a very impressive presentation, and the colors, I love it. Personally, I go crazy with these things as well. But something I'm curious about, these projects you showed, like working with the different artist communities, and you're refurbishing these buildings, specifically like the vinyl factory and that. How do you address the issue of gentrification? Do these projects count as gentrification? Or how do you minimize that negative impact of it? Or is it something that you can't control, you kind of have to work around certain issues? What's your approach to that?
I think gentrification is quite a challenging word because it means a lot of different things to different people. I think when people are fundamentally displaced from an environment that they would like to carry on living in, then for me that's the most negative outcome of a regeneration process. And that can be described as gentrification. I think if someone is even-handed and balanced and harmonized, like I said earlier, and tries to get the right balance between something that's affordable, something that's maybe messy and imperfect, and sits that next to something that might be slightly more expensive, slightly more shishi, then I think you can balance the two words. But I think it's a really tricky path. I think we've achieved it in Hackney Wick, Fish Island, and Eastwick and Sweetwater, because it's still cool, it's still messy, and it's still affordable. I don't know whether every regeneration project achieves that. And I think it would be very arrogant for me to say that we always do. I think that would be wrong. I think we've definitely participated in projects where we didn't get to keep the structure, we didn't get to keep the community intact. Everything's been cleaned away and apartments have been created. And we played a role and we contributed to that.
I just want to, sorry.
I really wanted to have a load of this kind of question because there was quite a lot said about housing and dozens of flats and flats and flats. So, and at the beginning you show some examples from these fantastic social housing complexes from 60s. So my question would be, what are actually those clients who are doing this kind of refurbishment, and what would be like the expectations, speaking about the flats? Are they all like affordable or social, or what are the percentage? Because this is quite an important question, especially for young people who are really like, we are kind of starving when speaking about housing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of homes in this presentation because we deal with a lot of large-scale places. So the portfolio obviously includes a huge amount of mixed use. The policy in England has continued to evolve over the last 20 years. Previously, there would be an expectation for approximately 10% of any big scheme to deliver affordable housing. That gradually grew to 20% in the UK overall, and gradually is increased to 30% in London. And for the public sector, Transport for London or Network Rail, who own large pieces of land next door to stations, there's an expectation that 50% of the accommodation will be affordable. The definition of affordable, like gentrification, is another very challenging thing and constantly is being scratched at. Affordable used to mean affordable rent. So someone who may not be able to buy a property can rent a property. And that's like a means-tested thing in terms of your salary, your expectation, your ability to find a job and sustain a job. Increasingly affordable can mean multiple different things. So, for example, I was speaking to someone about a project in Cambridge today, and affordable is now including master's students who's just finished their main degree education and have decided to continue to study, to become scholars, to do PhDs, and they're actually seen as affordable category. So key workers people sort of looking after the medicine or the ambulance or the fire or the police can again be seen sometimes as affordable accommodation. So there's quite a lot of blending and mixing in these things. And of course, like anything, you say, I need you to achieve 30%. Someone can then say, but I can't afford to do that as a developer, so I can only achieve 20%. But by having these targets, like any target, at least allows you to strive to do things as generously as possible. We definitely haven't got it perfect in the UK, and right now, as I said earlier, it's a really difficult time because numerous investors have got cold feet about driving forward projects at the moment, and I think it's because there's so much unease, uncertainty in the market globally, and it's easier to put your money into gold than it is to put your money into property because it takes time and it has risk. One could say that the UK system has got too complicated and takes too long in terms of the layers of bureaucracy and planning that one now has to go through. Just our Earls Court project, I think, had over 200 design reviews. I love design reviews, but that's a lot of design reviews. That's a lot of time, there's a lot of effort, a lot of preparation. It crosses 2 local authorities, different boundaries, different politicians, different decision makers. It's complex, and it cost a lot of money. Our client hoped to make the application in 2 years. We're now year 5. It's a lot of money. And it's in Slovakia, I see it here too. So I suppose it's the complexity and the time makes things more challenging.
Thank you. Some more questions from Slido, but you can raise your hands as well. I don't want to use that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, another question from Slido then. What made you create your company on the collaborative basis that you started your presentation with, rather than in a more traditional way, bosses and employees, or I guess a company owned by the bosses and partners? And do you feel the difference in maybe the attitude of your employees on a daily basis?
Well, when Christoph and I set up the company 21 years ago, we really wanted to make it a collective, collaborative company straight away. The truth is we actually couldn't because we had no money and we had no sustenance, and it really was just about the 2 of us just risking everything and seeing if we could find some clients who would take us seriously and give us some jobs. So there was nothing to share. There was nothing too big collective about. We were just trying. And so what we found was that it took us really 5 years to really get to a place where we were confident enough and strong enough to hire someone like Uri, who actually came over and actually worked with us for a few years in our studio. And we grew to about 10 or 15 people. The reason why we made more of a collective effort to become an employee-owned trust, a number of reasons. One, Christoph's 15 years older than me, and I wanted to make sure that we had a long-term, comfortable position for the studio, other people caring about its future, not just me. But also because we had many people who've been with us for 15, 16, 17, 18 years, at which point I think it's disrespectful to not think about, what about you? What about you and what about you in terms of your time and effort in this studio? You need to feel rewarded that there's a future. And so the idea of the employer-owned trust is that more of us kind of own less and we hopefully feel more of a future together. It's still early days to know whether that really works. We're 4 years into the employee-owned trust, and we've had 4 amazing years and then 1 really, really quite rubbish year this year. So at the moment, I think our morale is a bit low and the vibe is a little bit less than normal. And so I'm interested to see whether or not we can stick it out and feel good again next year.
Great. Is there another question, or? Yeah.
So David, thank you for a very interesting lecture again. My question would be about comparison between the UK and maybe Bratislava conditions. So you are now quite familiar with what we do, how we do, way of thinking, also maybe bureaucracy, which you somehow mentioned about the London. So what is the difference? Because you mentioned maybe a matter of years about your client in UK, so we also had some topics which took maybe decades, as you know. So what is the biggest difference? And that's basically it.
So far on the South Bank project, I think it's fair to say that I haven't quite felt the same level of community interaction and engagement and participation with groups, real life people walking the streets, getting engaged and being asked to be engaged in the vision of a future. That's something you couldn't possibly do in the UK. We have to, and it's an absolute essential requirement. And I'm actually hoping that some of the work of Petra Marco and the team that she's kind of driving here in Bratislava to make architecture and urbanism more transparent and open will get more people in the city wanting to have those discussions. The second thing I'd say is that I still feel like there needs to be more of a city vision here that connects all these things together. And I miss that a little bit. In London particularly, we have the Greater London Authority that has very strong, far-reaching strategies about cycling and swimming and health and well-being that I feel every single time I pick up a new project and think about how it ties together. And I wish there was more of that larger scale integrating thinking that was going on here. Really positively, and this is like a terrible advert for Penta, but it is the truth. I've been completely and utterly inspired by the fact that most of the client team here are trained architects. The fact that you're even bothering sitting here listening to me for 45 minutes is incredible, really incredible, because most of the time, frankly, the clients in the UK are not coming to the School of Architecture to listen to someone talk about architecture. And I do think there's a bit more of a disconnect in the UK system at the moment between the developers with, frankly, an obsession that form follows not function, form follows finance, rather than actually a proper, intelligent discourse about quality of architecture in the built environment. And I feel like we've had that conversation ever since we were lucky enough to be chosen to work on the South Bank. All we do is talk about, can we make a better, more beautiful set of buildings and details and landscapes? And for me, that's because you're architects, so you care. And that's the biggest difference that I've found. We have maybe 3 clients who have architects in their employ in the UK, and it really makes a difference to the conversation.
I don't want to spoil your nice point, but I mean here it is always about the form follows money, so no worries. Okay. This was just a kind of exception. But we have some more questions. As I put it already, that they preferred the students to ask like writing and not speaking, so here we are.
Oh, more, okay. I'll go here, just because otherwise I'll stare that way the whole time.
Okay.
Okay, so balance, right?
Another question from Slido. When you value play in your career in studio, what is your favorite game to keep up the playful spirit? A favorite game besides architecture? Or
wow, favorite game?
Yeah, that's
well, Super Mario Kart. Obviously. I haven't played Super Mario Kart until just like last night for about a decade, and I just suddenly came back as to how many student years I lost to that game. But it's obviously a bit better now. But yeah, wow, what a game. Super Mario Kart, easy.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. Next question. Do you experience pushback from investors when you leave space for growth in the project and not have everything perfect? And how do you manage that pushback from the investors?
Yes, we do. And yes, it's tough. And sometimes we don't get what we would like to happen as the outcome. But the best way is through telling a wonderful story and allowing our clients to fall in love with the idea too, and allow other people to come on a journey. I've been doing the same thing for 30 years, and some people who don't know me very well see me as a salesman. And I find it really stupid that they see it as a salesman, like I'm just really good at telling stories, and so because of that I'm a salesman. And I can sell snow to the Eskimos, it's been said. Anybody who says that just doesn't get it. I personally I'm lucky enough to be able to share things, not sell anything, just share things that I think are worth doing. And I just hope other people say, yeah, me too. Because we're all human beings and we're all just trying to make things a bit better. And so what we try to do is just simply try and get our clients to be the nicest version of themselves, the most generous version of themselves. And sometimes we lose and sometimes we win. We're just sharing what we think are really good ideas.
Just a small remark I discovered, which is
Anyway, but I just want to
one small comment for the students. This is not completely true, because look at him. He can really tell the stories and sell the projects and the ideas. That's true. And I mean, this is also a kind of lesson you should learn, that if you are an architect in the future, this is what you need to...
Don't sell, share.
Share, of course, but it means like sell in a...
No, it's a very core, it's a really core, incredibly important core strength. Think about it like this. Imagine you had a really, really, really horrible liquid in this bottle. Horrible, not what, really disgusting, fizzy, shitty, awful liquid. And then someone told you to go and sell it to somebody. Buy this. That's selling, right? You're hey, it's really good, it's really fizzy, it's really bubbly, go up your nose, woo, it's going to make you stay up all night. That's selling. Sharing, you'd say, that's crap. Have this instead. This is so much better, because it's just awful. There's a fundamental difference. So sharing is simply you believing in your idea because it's really good and you want somebody else to agree with you. It's so different to selling something.
sharing is caring.
Yes, sharing is caring, yeah, because we're trying to make the planet better.
Some more questions.
Yes, another question from the Slido. Have you in any way adjusted your approach to projects going from the UK to Slovakia? Have you reflected on the local context in the two competitions here that you won?
Yes, I suppose the thing that we bring here is an obsession with nature and an obsession with landscape-led urbanism and being generous in terms of ecosystems. That's not new. But what we learn here is obviously the particular climate, the particular juxtaposition of different systems and the different weather you have and the different planting you have, but also the different way you're using public space, I would say. That we've been sort of quietly watching and learning and listening and sitting out on a cold evening and a wet evening and a sunny evening and just seeing how people use space. And that definitely nuances the way that we're designing. But, you know, everything we're doing will continue to grow and evolve over time and be inhabited by people and continue to evolve even once we've finished building it. So I think that occupation of space is absolutely key.
Yeah, there is one more question. Please, one or two more questions, and then we will leave David to. Yeah, he needs to prepare for the presentation tomorrow, because this will be about our part of science. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Hello there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your lecture. Oh, this is very loud. I think that we're really lucky that we had this presentation of some of the actual crucial projects that are going to happen in Bratislava. So thanks for that. And I got really interested in what you said about the comparison of the British practice or like what's going on there and when you try to build here. And you said that like building a project as South Bank wouldn't be possible without the participation of some kind of like local communities and having the more insight. So is it something that you would actually appreciate in Bratislava, like to have, like to know more about the sort of different visions, different approaches of people that would potentially use the space, or you just mention it as like a, you know, like something that you noticed that this is a big difference between Britain and Slovakia?
I think even phase 0, the chili pepper under the bridge, is a really great start to initiate some level of change that allows people to respond in some way to allow our client to learn, to then want to do something new. So we visited that today. It's been open a month or so, and already, and I'm not going to embarrass him, Jakob was saying, we should do this next, because he was experiencing how different members of the community are pausing and enjoying that space. And the way that we thought that space would work is already different to the way it is working, which allows us to actually learn and then do. And I think it's just fundamentally good practice to have a vision, but we're ready to allow that vision to continue to be shaped and changed. You know, what's very strong in our vision for the South Bank is the trees first, nature first, boardwalk first, promenade first, and gifting of these bowls that can be shaped and can be inhabited over time with a different variety of program. How that absolutely happens is up to the city. You know, you have an amazing theatrical space, I can't remember what it's called, the marketplace, that was taken over and has been turned into this incredible venue that might not have happened if it wasn't for the 5 or so people that made the effort to bring that into life as a community cultural institute some 10 years ago. I was lucky enough to go to a book launch there. It was absolutely incredible space. That might not have happened if hadn't been just 3, 4, 5 people who really cared and made an effort to bring that to life. The challenge is to try and build that kind of flex into a new piece of city that actually has the potential to then say, I don't know what I am. Could you help me discover what I am? Oh, thank you for giving me life. But that takes people, it takes the generosity of the developer, the foresight of the designer, and then the spirit of a community to want it. And that takes time.
Well, I honestly hope there will be enough of the places that will be sort of uncertain, unfinished, and open to whatever.
Yeah, I think there will be.
Thank you.
Let's keep fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question from your side. No. Okay, so I would like to thank. Well, I don't need it. I can shout as you. So I would like to thank you so much for being with us. It was really a pleasure, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well. We will meet in 1 week to discuss your reflections, and with all the audience we will meet in 2 weeks to welcome our second dear guest, which is John Allen, an old school guy, but a very famous one, doing